Thank you so much for joining us with Shaka TV's Malama Aina show. We want to start the show responding to a whole series of ridiculous rumors and innuendos made about the Shaka movement.
Right.
And the powers that be, the powers who wish the citizens not to succeed in what it is that they're doing, which is a temporary moratorium, which is completely reasonable, are attempting to divert our attention and everything that we're doing to these other issues so that we don't focus on the real issues and trying to cast doubt into the community and the public. And really what they're doing is that they're telling the community, I mean, essentially they're telling you who are watching the show that you're not smart enough, that you're basically you're stupid. And I'm sorry, I'm not saying it, they're saying that you're too stupid to recognize that this is what they do. That they try and get you to have a doubt about this 14,000 citizens who want to see that things are safe. You know, I mean, that's not an unreasonable thing on their part, because obviously, you know, they're not talking about the real issues. Are they guaranteeing? Has the industry to you or anywhere in the papers, have they guaranteed that soil sterilization is good for Hawaii?
Oh, no.
Have they talked about how 90 or so chemicals that are being combined that we have no idea what those chemicals are, that are all over the soil and possibly are they guaranteeing that that's safe, that our water's safe?
No.
Are they guaranteeing that there's absolutely no problem whatsoever with fugitive dust? No, they're not doing any of that.
No.
They don't want to address the issues. They want to say, oh, these bad, crazy things are happening.
Well,
right?
it's to be expected. It's a disinformation campaign.
Yeah.
This is, you know, you're dealing with company that it's a global corporation, multiple global corporations with very high paid advertising companies and public relation firms, and the very best.
Yeah.
These are people that spin the Supreme Court.
Exactly. Well, and they have Supreme Court justices who used to work for them.
Exactly.
You know? What's really funny is I just find it so humorous. I mean, guys, you go around the internet and you're looking at what's happening, what have you. I mean, it's these blog sites that various people have been responding to. There's about 4 or 5 sites that make themselves look like they're community sites, but there's only like 5 or 12 members.
Or that they speak for farmers.
Yeah, exactly. And it's really even more humorous. Either all these individuals who belong to these sites have some major telepathic connection, because there's literally sentences that are copy and pasted from one person to some other fake name over here, and it's just the whole story, the exact same line.
And there are several of them. There are several people that appear on various different blog sites at various different times. Repeatedly, they come back, they make their same kind of statements. This person is the voice of reason. That person speaks for science, and anybody that doesn't agree with them is anti-science. If you look at these sites, you see that there are these characteristic responses that they make over and over again. If you call them a shill, well, that the very fact that you inferred that they're a shill is somebody who takes money from the corporations to spout their political agenda. If you call them a shill, well, that means that your argument is weak and you're resorting to the shill word.
What's really interesting is that at 11:01 a.m., stories on these blog sites began.
Last night?
Yesterday morning.
Yesterday morning.
It wasn't until just before noon that the county even called us to inform us that they had some concerns about some things.
So even before the county took an action, the social network was alive with information.
And then before we even got an official letter from the county, because they were going to write this all up in a letter, things are already being published in the news. How does that happen, Sam?
Well, it's the same way that the county says that, well, we got 8 or 10 phone calls about this. Well, who made the phone calls? It's the same people made the phone calls who are essentially, paid to infiltrate.
And they specifically stated that some calls came from Roz Baker's office. Isn't that interesting?
Well,
You know, what's behind that?
Why is because somebody told Roz to do it.
Yeah.
And it's part of the political patronage. It's part of the political process, and it's only going to get worse.
Yeah.
As we get, as this initiative is on the ballot, these companies are going to dump millions of dollars into this market, this media market.
Yeah.
The real beneficiaries of all of this are the media outlets, the newspapers, the radio stations.
They make all the money.
They're going to be making all the money.
Huge
because
money.
And I look at it, my personal approach is one, I'm trying to adopt an Aikido principle. I want to use their energy and let them spend millions and millions of dollars here because it's a non-presidential election, and so the news agencies are going to be desperate for stories, and that these agrochemical companies are dumping millions and millions of dollars into this tiny little island to get their way here makes us an international story. It shows the world how important this issue is and how desperate these companies are to be able to continue exploiting you the way that they are doing.
Yeah, it's really, this is real life, folks, and it's happening here. And we have an opportunity as citizens to really just kind of laugh at it at this point. It's absurd almost. It's so obvious. It's so obvious. Like you're watching a movie and you say, oh, they're going to do this, right? And then they do that. Well, we know that these types of things are going to happen. Fortunately, I believe it's the Maui Times called up the office and asked for the truth. They said, hey, really what's going on here? So they're actually doing fair and balanced reporting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Because everything else that's out there is conjecture and innuendo and suggestion and and smearing and all this other kind of stuff. It's not real reporting. This is obviously agenda-driven. Communications. I won't even call it reporting.
Well, it's miscommunication.
Miscommunication.
And there are two primary things that sort of have bubbled up over in the past day or so. The first is the purported public access to the voter registration rolls.
Yeah, we'll address that in this letter directly.
So, well,
and then the second thing. Okay, so the first thing is somehow we revealed all the voters' addresses.
Which didn't happen.
Never happened.
Which, the voter registration rolls were never publicly published in any place where just anybody could happen along and find them.
Exactly.
They were never vulnerable that way.
And we had already communicated to the county that we would be doing this when we purchased the list. Anyone can walk in to the county clerk's office and for $50 buy a list of every registered voter, all 84,000 of us, and have their address and their zip code and their name and everything. Anyone can purchase this. Now, there's specific rules on how you use it, and we followed those rules, and nothing, which was substantiated at the very end of this article, that no rules were broken, blah, blah, blah. But they write up this whole, 2 pages of sensational, oh my God, no one asked me if my, can be revealed.
And social media is awash with people that are insulted or feel vulnerable because of this. Well, it's a non-issue. And that the point is that it's designed to take energy away from what the real issues are.
Exactly. So then the second concern that was brought up in the last 24 hours is this idea that one of our citizens was talking to petitioners and realizing how much they'd been sacrificing. Because there's 500 citizens, folks. 500 of us, not 5, 10, 20, 500 of us who are going around collecting signatures for this ordinance. That's significant. And there are many who have worked really hard and have had to hire babysitters and spend money on gas. And the citizens saw how hard these people were working, so she wanted to give back to the givers. So she said, okay, for the next 10 days, I'll donate $5 for every valid signature that a petitioner gives so that they can afford to be out there and they can have, you know what I mean?
Which is a very generous amount.
And what's really interesting is that the petitioners are saying that they're excited to redonate that money back for our former agro employee fund for remediation services and for public organic gardens.
So Shaka petition handlers, people that had been donating their time because
and
they
are registered
as registered petitioners, 500 people, many of whom, all of whom have been donating their time.
Completely.
Now, even with an offer of $5 per signature are offering to give that money back to Shaka because that's how much they care about this issue.
Exactly. Right?
We had a, so it's
Folks.
and $5 per signature is a generous offer.
Very.
You know, I mean, that's not, first of all, paying anybody for petition handling in Hawaii is not common because Hawaii is usually so low key. It's an example of why this issue is so strong. Even in California, you know, petition handlers were getting $1.50.
Yeah.
So
Plus an hourly wage.
plus an hourly wage.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So well, plus an hourly wage. So the you know, $5 is a generous amount, and it's a gift to give back to people local in the community.
Right.
And Shaka, all of the funding that Shaka has received has come from local community.
Absolutely.
And the money's been spent using local vendors to make things happen.
We specifically made that choice so that any monies that were given to the Shaka movement from its citizens were then spent in the community to support the community and the citizens. Right. We've never gone off island with anything.
Right, and again, this is in response to the social media, you know, people that are hawking this issue, saying that this is a California-run organization,
Exactly.
that it you know, that this is not a grassroots organization.
So thank you for the opportunity for us to clarify all of these matters and to point out the ridiculousness of the tactics that are being used to smear this campaign and divert all of our attentions. We are so grateful for the opportunity, and we look forward to pointing out all the other ones that come our way.
Right.
So let me.
And they will.
I have to take time just so that everyone can see our official stance, and I'm going to read this letter that we wrote to the Maui Times and are circulating throughout all the media. It's going to take a few minutes, but please listen to the entire letter because I think it makes all of these points very clearly and succinctly.
You tied it all together in this letter. Go ahead.
So it says, thank you for this opportunity to address the rumors about Shaka movement that are circulating throughout the media. There are several points that we would like to respond to and clarify. As per our earlier phone conversation, we were on the phone with the Maui Times, this is a temporary GMO crop moratorium until the environmental and public health impact study can be conducted to ensure that such GMO agrochemical practices that are occurring here in Maui County are safe to the environment, our citizens, and to the Aina for current and future generations. I mean, that's pretty reasonable.
It is.
Right? You know? First, concerning voters' personal information. Rest assured that voters' personal information was never at any time made available to the public. Never. Okay? The ability to verify voters' addresses for the purpose of assisting voters to sign the petition with their correct registered address was made available only to our registered petitioners through a private, non-public URL through a back door in our website. You could not find the link on our website. It was nothing, you know what I mean? It was
Couldn't do a Google search to find
it.
It
non-existent.
Non-existent.
So, this is legal use of the voters' data that we purchased for $50 from the Maui County Clerk. We had informed and verified with the county clerk this legal use of such data, and to use it in such a manner when we purchased it back in February of 2014. Upon being made aware of the media's revealing of this private and hidden URL. Okay, this thing was private, it was hidden, and all of a sudden the media publishes it and makes it non-private and public. We didn't do it, they did. So anyways, the moment we were notified that the media had made this private backdoor URL available to the public to view these things, I mean, within literally less than a minute, we pulled down the entire operation. I mean, the entire system, all the address, the whole program. Okay, just a moment here. So upon being made aware of the media's revealing of this private and hidden URL and the possible public exposure of this information, we immediately removed the page and function from our web server. It has now been replaced with a call-in hotline for our petitioners to help voters verify the correct registered addresses. Very simple. Secondly, now, concerning the $5 per signature offer, our angel donor, who is a Maui resident, wants to give back to our volunteer petitioners. She has offered to donate to our currently registered petitioners $5 for each valid signature they acquire during the last 10 days of our signature collection campaign. Her intention is to give back to the givers, the volunteer petitioners who have selflessly given their time and energy towards this effort. Often, people don't realize that there are expenses incurred by the petitioners, such as gas money, babysitters, food, I mean, all the things. I mean, they're taking times from their lives,
Right.
you know, to be out there. And our angel wants to recognize these individuals and thank them for volunteering their time to this cause to help protect the keiki and the Aina for current and future generations. Some petitioners have expressed that they plan to donate the money back to Shaka to assist with its educational programs, its sustainable jobs for former agrochemical workers programs, soil remediation programs, and community organic gardens.
That's great.
It's just beautiful. Lastly, the Shaka movement would like to unequivocally state that it is a wholly Maui-grown grassroots organization. We understand that other organizations throughout the state have been associated with off-island funding. Rest assured that the Shaka movement here in Maui County has been wholly funded by Maui County residents. The proposed ordinance, as submitted to the county, has been reviewed by lawyers from around the world pro bono. We just did it for free, wanted to see what we were doing. Yet all monies donated thus far have come from within our community and we have not received any donations from institutions or organizations outside of Maui County of any kind.
That's great.
Period.
That makes it Maui local.
Furthermore, the donations collected to date have been utilized within Maui's economy so as to support Maui businesses and services. We want our efforts to support everyone within our community. We could get t-shirts for half the price we're getting them if we were to send them off to another state or even out of our country. But we use the money to support our t-shirt vendors, our printers, I mean everybody here locally on Maui. So, the current media characterization of Shaka movement, suggesting wrongdoing of any sort, or off-island interests trying to influence what is happening in Maui County, is wholly unjustified and untrue. Period. Unjustified and untrue. Yet, this type of characterization and reporting is to be expected in such matters and has not been unanticipated by the over 14,000 Maui County citizens who are already participating in this process. Everybody knows this is what's going to happen. They're looking for it. They anticipate it. They get caught in it for just a moment, but then they realize, oh yeah, this is what they do. Those who would wish for the citizens not to succeed in a moratorium such as ours typically want the public to focus on these unsubstantiated and sensational claims so as to avoid and divert the public's attention, conversation, and contemplation on the real issues, such as the multitudes of chemicals and chemical combination cocktails being sprayed on the land, the sterilization of the soils, the fugitive dust, the rising birth defects and health decline of our citizens, and the real issues that we are all facing here in Maui County. We thank you for printing the truth and being a fair reporting agency. We look forward to further communications as this process and these concerns of the temporary moratorium continue. Sincerely, the Shaka movement.
Yeah, right on.
So there's the truth, folks. And we're grateful to share it with you. It's kind of exciting. We've been waiting, and they've tried, and they've been slowly saying we're going to hurt farmers, we're going to do all this.
Well, they've got all kinds of fake
We
arguments.
got a video clip for you in just a second where Makana addresses the truth about who's hurting farmers, because it's not us, and it's the history of how local farmers and local agriculture has been destroyed and decimated by these, monocrops of the industrial agricultural business, all of which, everything they grow here, is shipped away.
Shipped away.
We get nothing.
We're not benefiting from it.
We get the poisons, they get the profits.
Yep.
So that's the response to that. We've given all the time we're going to. So today's show, we wanted to talk about what are, in fact, the talking points.
Yes.
Right?
Well, how did we get to this place? I mean, how did this environment get created?
Well, there were several of us who were looking over the Constitution, and we noticed in the Constitution, Article 11, Section 1 through 10, they speak about something that area of the Constitution is called the public trust doctrine. And public trust means the things that every citizen here owns. right? The thing that is even for everybody to be taken care of. So they have what are called the public trust resources that they speak about in the public trust doctrine. And the public trust resources that are equally shared by everybody are the air, the water, the land, the reefs, the beaches. I mean, those are the public trust resources. Those are what we have available here. We can't go anywhere else and get them. It's what the islands consist of. Anyways, in that part of the Constitution, it says that those public trust resources are to be protected.
In the Constitution,
In the Constitution, it says they are to be protected for current and future generations.
And this is something that's kind of unique.
Yeah.
They're to Hawaii. I don't know if there are any other state constitutions.
There are seven constitutions I was informed of
State constitutions that do reference the land and the specific rights of the land.
Exactly, but not as succinctly as
well,
ours
and
does.
certainly no way in the way that Hawaiians would, because there is a reverence, there is a connection to the land.
Well, it's a cultural connection. It's not just like, oh, we love how beautiful it is. This is the source of life.
Yeah.
This is, I mean, when Kalo came down and this is our relative, I mean, all the plants, everything that's here, this is our brethren. This is our, I mean, it's not just some, this idea that the environment is there for us to conquer and use for our gratification. No, the environment is the very thing that is our life.
It's what sustains our life.
Yeah. Without it, I mean, you can't just like go to another island. This is it. If we destroy it, it's gone.
And there's even a different interpretation of the Hawaii state motto.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
That the usual interpretation talks about the righteousness.
Yeah, life is perpetuated. Life is perpetuated through oh gosh.
Yeah, well,
we'll have to cut that for just a second. Right is perpetuated through balanced relations. Through righteousness. The life of the land is. The life of the land is perpetuated through righteousness. Now that is what has been taught in the schools, right? That is what went through the whole indoctrination with Kamehameha schools and then trying to teach the Western way, and it was life is perpetuated, the life of the land is perpetuated in righteousness. That's not the real interpretation.
No, righteousness is a Christian interpretation.
Exactly.
It's a different spin.
To many kahuna, kapuna, ali'i, and Makana himself, the actual interpretation of that state motto is life is perpetuated through a balanced relationship with the land.
With the land. Balanced. Pono is balanced.
Balanced. Life is perpetuated through a balanced relationship with the land. Well, it's bombing the land, literally bombing it with tons of chemicals every year, right? Is that living in a balanced relationship with land? I mean, think about it, folks. What happens if we continue doing this for 20 years? 20 more years of this. We just continue bombing the land and putting all these chemicals on there. What happens? You think the land's going to be okay? I beg to differ, and 14,000 of us beg to differ that that's not, that's not necessarily safe. So that's where it all began, by understanding the public trust doctrine. Now, what all countries, the standard for the world is that if you suspect something might be dangerous, you institute something called the precautionary principle. The precautionary principle is as simple as, like think of a child, and the child feels heat coming off of a flame. The precautionary principle is the child doesn't just put their hand in the flame. They feel the heat, and they feel how close, and they check it, and they examine it to see whether or not they're going to get hurt by the flame. Well, then the same is true with what is happening here, that we need to examine what are the real-world, real-time things that are happening to our soil, what is happening to our air, what is happening to our groundwater that we drink, what is happening to the water runoff that hits the reefs and the beaches, what is happening with the possible cross-contamination of pollens that are being breathed by humans, and that's really significant according to Dr. Lauren Payne.
Yes, it is.
Breathing the pollen.
Yep.
I mean, we're not even talking about consuming the food that they're growing for cattle and the seeds that they're doing. We're talking about actually breathing
because it's
pollen.
direct. It's a direct access of the genetically modified material into our bodies.
Yeah. So we then approach all of this and we just suspend. We say, okay, this is very reasonable. Let's just stop what's happening and see if what's happening is dangerous. See if what's happening is perpetuating, a balanced relationship with the land. Is it going to hurt our resources and the islands and this fragile environment for the current and future generations. And so we exercise the precautionary principle and get the real world data, the real testing. What is the fugitive dust doing? You know, what happens when you breathe that? How much is getting into your homes and in your cars and on your skin, and your children are playing in it? What is really happening to the groundwater? What's happening, 1 inch, 2 inches, 4 inches, 3 feet, 4 feet with the chemicals that have been leaching in for 15 years? What's happening when you sterilize? I mean, sterilize, kill all life. What's happening when you kill all life in the soil? Is that really helping? So that's what the first part of the talking points are. This is the public trust doctrine, the public trust resources, and the precautionary principle. Because those things are very reasonable, and they are the standard way in which any country throughout the entire world would approach any type of issue like this.
Right.
So then we have to talk about the second talking point, which would be chemical cocktails. Okay, what's a chemical cocktail? Well, see, what we have here is we have many chemicals that are being used, as upwards to 90 chemicals that are being used. Some are known as restricted use chemicals. And those restricted use chemicals that they're using, these herbicides and pesticides, have very specific instructions on how one would use these. And some of these instruction pages, we have them at the Shaka movement. You look at them, they're 70 pages long. I mean, 70 pages long of instructions about the type of spray, that nozzle you have to use, and the type of respirator you need to be wearing, and what the weather conditions need to be. I mean, they're very specific.
Right.
Okay,
and they actually have to be really well adhered to.
Yeah.
Because the recent stories in national magazines have talked about how farmers, when they're a little bit lax, are exposed to the pesticides at low levels, and it actually changes the way that their cognitive function happens, and there's a high rate of suicide because of it.
That's the lead story in Time magazine. Was it Newsweek or Time?
I think it was Newsweek.
Yeah, Newsweek. Cover story. Farmers in the United States committing suicide because they go into a deep depression due to the reaction to the chemicals that they are experiencing in their farm fields, and the neuroreceptors are damaged, sending them into deep depression and causing suicide. This is Newsweek reporting this. Cover story. This isn't us making it up.
We're not making this stuff up.
This
folks.
is for real, so it's there. So these chemical cocktails, we have restricted use chemicals that are being used on the soil, and so each one is in fact regulated. It's kind of like medicine, right? Chemical medicines that we take are chemicals that are regulated, and you're told to take so many chemicals every hour. You can only take 2 of these pills. So kind of think of like a muscle relaxer, or maybe Valium or something that people do use, and there's very specific rules on how to take that. And then way over here, there's very specific rules about drinking beer or any type of alcohol.
Mixing.
Right? But you put those 2 together, and they potentiate each other.
Right.
And the effects can be fatal.
Enormous. One enhances the other.
Yeah.
Two things that on their own can be safe, when combined, can lead to absolute disaster.
Excellent point. So we have 90 such chemicals being combined.
In the fields.
In the fields. And according to the math, that's more combinations than there are drops of water in the ocean.
A trillion different possible interactions that these chemicals can have with one another when they're applied in the open air in the fields.
And that's not accounting for the chemicals that were in the soil before they started using these chemicals from previous activities that were happening.
The water wells here on Maui, it's well documented, they are polluted with remnants of DDT and other heavy chemicals that were applied during the early pineapple days.
Yeah, and
that stuff is still in the aquifers, it's still in the ground, and none of the current pesticides that are applied have ever been tested in conjunction with what we know is already in the soil.
Yeah, and there was a lawsuit against the pineapple industry that the county won, where for 30 years they have to filter the water and maintain cleaning of the water, and built these filtration plants because of these issues in the past. So these chemical combinations are just enormous, and no one can even tell you what the combinations are and or what their effects are on the Aina and or the children or all people.
Right. You have it's easy way to look at it is like the secondhand smoke from cigarettes. There's all kinds of carcinogenic and other things that are in smoke, and you have a right not to be exposed to that because someone else is smoking. Well, the pesticide use and the GMO growing of crops here on Maui County is the same issue. You have a right to not be exposed to these things. You didn't sign off on nobody asked your permission to expose you to chemical experiments. The stuff drifts. They spray the stuff in the fields and let them do what they need to do in the fields. That's farming. They're in the business. Okay, fine. Farmers get to do what farmers do, and that's okay. But the stuff does drift. It's documented. They used to say it doesn't drift. It does drift. It's documented. Look it up. And that documented drift, those pesticides are mixing into the water, they're spreading in the air, they're in the fugitive dust that's here on Maui that we're all exposed to. And so what they do in the fields does affect your life.
And when they get into your body, even if they were to stop everything, the effects of what is happening to your body are still going to happen.
Still going to happen, and repeated effects over time. They say, well, it's been used for all these years now and there's no problem. Well, the problems have been accumulating, and they're starting to show. You know, and what we're asking, what the Shaka movement is asking, what the 5 citizens are asking, what the moratorium is about is, look, there's enough questions in all of this. Let's just pause for a minute. Let's have some studies done that study exactly the way that they are used here. Not in the laboratory, not isolated individually, but they mix these things in the field. Let's study, let's see how those things affect people. If they don't, great, they get to go back and continue what they're doing. If it does affect people, I'm sorry, there's no amount of jobs that are worth the disaster to young people's lives that are born with birth defects. It's not worth the risk.
So amen to that. And so thank you very much for watching this portion of the show. Stay focused, people. Speak the truth, and know that these types of things are going to be coming at us and happening, yet we will prevail.
It's going to get more and more intense. Stay with us, and we will continue to give you our honest understanding of where things are.
So bless you all. And coming up next, we have Makana talking about how this industry is hurting small farmers. We'll be back.
There has been a lot of talk about this movement being anti-farmer and anti-farming, and this is my official response to that. Some people claim that our movement, the initiative to protect our kuleana from the unchecked hazards of agrochemical industry, is somehow anti-farming or anti-farmer. Nothing could be further from the truth. 121 years ago, Princess Bernice Pauahi Bishop entrusted her massive land holdings to a group of foreign businessmen who, rather than utilize such wealth to empower the native peoples, worked to create an export ag economy controlled by a few industrialists and based on monocrops with intensive chemical inputs. They imported legions of low-income workers from abroad and invited a century of toxic land management practices while systematically diminishing Hawaii's centuries-old ability to fully feed its people. That is anti-farmer. That is anti-farming. 60 years ago, when the US federal government conducted quiet studies as to how to diminish the farmer workforce and establish propaganda campaigns to influence farmers to leave their plots of land and relocate to cities, knowing such shifts would incite a scarcity food economy, thereby driving up food prices while establishing a limited number of agricultural monopolies in the form of larger corporations. These subversive actions, funded by taxpayers, are little known to the American public and served as predecessor to the current corporate-controlled sick and unsustainable food production and distribution systems. That was anti-farmer. 40 years ago, as the Vietnam War came to a close and the war chemical companies decided to rebrand themselves as life sciences companies and enter the food markets, seeking new and ever-expanding venues for their deadly wares, that was anti-farming. When their corporate attorneys, moonlighting as political appointments to key positions in the USDA and FDA, tasked with the important role of drafting safety standards for this new biotechnology, manipulated language to forego establishing necessary regulatory principles in lieu of carte blanche free market access to the makers of these never-before-seen and not fully understood products, and how they rigged the patent system into allowing them to trademark nature itself, thereby allowing them the legal power to sue farmers who, through the natural occurrence of pollen drift, came to have their own plots of land infected with the patented DNA. That is anti-farmer. How the US federal government subsidizes commodity crops like corn, which is largely grown for ethanol to be used in the manufacturing of biofuels, a wholly unsustainable method of fuel creation, which causes more environmental destruction than mitigates climate change, and also for livestock feed, which is not a natural food for cattle and causes gastrointestinal diseases in cattle populations. Or cotton, which creates artificially low prices that, when brought to market, adversely affect the poor rural Indian farmers, and, as we have tragically witnessed, has resulted in more than 250,000 farmer suicides in India. That is anti-farmer. When we complain about organic food being high-priced, not realizing that we've already paid for much of the cheap toxic corn, soy, and cotton via federal subsidies, which further work to undermine the organic farmer's ability to compete. That is anti-farmer. If we define farming as the process of making money by growing crops to sell, irregardless of the effects such farming practices have on the land, then yes, we are anti-farmer. This is exactly as Governor Abercrombie recently defined farming on video on the internet, speaking before CTAR. Making money growing crops. There was more. I'll let you discover that on your own. But I see farming as more than just making money. Yes, for career farmers, it must be profitable, but not at the cost of the destruction of natural resource. Farming in the ancient Hawaiian way was carried out with a keen sensitivity to the limited availability of fresh water. Placement of crops and timings of plantings and harvests were decided according to a comprehensive understanding and recognition of the greater environment and the local community needs of people who lived in the vicinities. Today, the chemical companies follow a singular guideline: efficiency to maximize profit regardless of adverse environmental effect. And so, we are gathered here tonight not only to put an end to this corruption of the role of the mahi'ai, the farmer, but also to remind the world what it means to be a farmer. That with farming comes a kuleana, the right to extract value from the land, as well as the responsibility to malama that land, to care for it so that it may provide life for generations to come. Ua mau ke ea o ka Aina I ka pono. Life is perpetuated through a balanced relationship with the land. Aloha Aina.
Welcome back.
Thank you so much for joining us with Shaka TV's Malama Aina show. And we'll be back next week. With more information and more truth about what is happening.
The best truth that we know how to deliver. I mean, our agenda here is not to make money. We're not corporate driven. Yeah. We're here because we care. Yeah. We're here. We live on Maui. You live on Maui, and these things matter to us, and we hope they matter to you.
And remember, one of the key, almost internationally recognized experts on GMOs, Jeffrey Smith from the Institute of Responsible Technology, is going to be here for 2 weeks. And there's all different types of activities. We've loaded them before. Please come to the website. Come to those events.
Aloha Maui. This is Jeffrey Smith, and I'll be there with you in May to celebrate and support the incredible historic efforts of the Shaka movement to protect yourself, your Aina, and future generations and the children from GMOs. In fact, the world has a lot to learn from Hawaii. I'm learning myself about how important the Aina is, how important the culture and future generations are. And the use of this particular mechanism, this initiative, is perfect because the government is not stepping in to protect the Aina, is not protecting the people. And so this is the time for the people to step up and say, we need to protect ourselves from GMOs. And I'll be discussing some of the things about GMOs and why we need to protect ourselves from them when I come there to Maui this May. On the 27th, I'll be speaking at the Farmers Union meeting at Haiku, at the Haiku Community Center. And then the big not-to-miss event is on the 28th in the MAC, in the McCoy Theater. Then on Saturday the 31st, we'll have all day together, starting with my film Genetic Roulette, The Gamble of Our Lives, then a catered lunch, then all afternoon doing deep Q&A, additional presentations to really understand the issue. Again, congratulations on completing the first phase of the signature gathering. Good luck on the next 2 weeks. And I want to say again, this is really a remarkable thing. The world is looking to Maui. This is an historic event. And it's a perfect use of a citizens' initiative when the government is not protecting the land and the people for future generations. We have to protect ourselves. Aloha and mahalo.
Those events, you will be an excellent opportunity to learn about what is really going on. The corporations want you to think a certain way, and they are giving you disinformation. They're spending a lot of money to lure you into a false sense of security. And people who understand, even our Dr. Lauren Pang, who is the county, he works with Shaka as a private citizen, but his day job is a county health official. And he is very, very concerned and very alarmed with the combinations of pesticide chemicals that are being sprayed in the fields that are leaching out into people and getting into people's bodies, creating change in their bodies that is, you can't turn back.
So thank you very much, and we'll see you next week with another Shaka Movement, Malama, Aina show.
Mahalo.